The morning rush in New York always pressed down like a weight on Daniel's shoulders. Raising a 7-year-old daughter alone was never easy, but he tried his best to keep Emma's world bright. On his way to work that day, he decided to stop by a neighborhood grocery store to grab a few essentials: milk, bread, and fruit for Emma's school lunch. He didn't notice at first, but the line at checkout moved unusually slow. When it was his turn, Daniel saw why. The cashier, a young woman barely in her 20s, was struggling to scan items. Her hands shook so badly that the loaf of bread slipped twice, bouncing against the counter. Customers behind him sighed loudly, muttering in irritation, but Daniel just watched carefully. He knew the signs of someone overwhelmed. For years, Daniel had balanced parenting, bills, and long shifts at work, often running on little sleep himself. But something about the young cashier's trembling hands felt different. It wasn't just nervousness. Her face was paled, her eyes tired, and her lips pressed tightly as if she were holding back something more than stress. Instead of showing frustration, Daniel leaned a little closer, speaking in a voice meant only for her. "Are you all right? Why are your hands shaking?" His tone wasn't harsh, but filled with quiet concern. The girl froze. For a moment she seemed like she might not answer at all, but then her lips parted, and a fragile voice slipped out. "A broken bar I haven't eaten in 2 days," she whispered, barely audible over the buzz of the store. Daniel's chest tightened. She went on, words trembling as much as her hands. "I've been working double shifts, trying to make sure my little brother has food, but it's getting harder. Sometimes I can only afford to buy him meals, and I go without." Her eyes darted down, ashamed of the confession. Daniel was stunned. He had expected maybe nerves or lack of sleep, but not this. Not the raw truth of hunger in the middle of a city filled with abundance. For a moment, he couldn't speak. The realization hit him hard. Her shaking wasn't clumsiness, it was exhaustion and emptiness. Ma, who had been quietly holding his hand, looked up at her dad with wide eyes. She could sense the heaviness in the air, even if she didn't fully understand the depth of the struggle. Daniel's heart ached. He saw his younger self in that cashier as someone carrying too much responsibility, fighting battles no one else could see. His mind flashed to the long nights after Emma's mother left, when he had eaten less so his daughter could eat more. He remembered the weight of bills he couldn't always pay on time and the silent prayers whispered over a child's bed. The pain in Lily's voice was too familiar, and it cut through him like a blade. The customers behind them continued to shuffle impatiently, but Daniel didn't care. The world could wait. He looked at the young woman again, really looked at her, and what he saw wasn't just a cashier struggling with groceries. He saw a sister, a provider, a fighter who was on the edge of breaking down yet still showing up every day because someone depended on her. He understood that burden better than most. For the first time in years, Daniel found himself speechless. Words felt too small for the gravity of what she had just admitted. It was one thing to hear about people struggling on the news, but another to see it face to face, in the tired, trembling hands of someone right in front of you. The moment stretched, heavy with silence, until Emma's small voice cut through it like sunlight. "Daddy," she whispered softly, tugging at his sleeve. "She needs help." The innocence in her words reminded Daniel of something simple yet profound: that kindness wasn't complicated. It didn't need long speeches or second thoughts. It just needed action. And standing there, staring at the young woman who could barely steady her hands, Daniel knew Emma was right. Something inside him shifted. He realized that sometimes the universe places people in front of you not by accident, but because you are meant to respond. And in that checkout line, with the city rushing outside, he understood this was one of those moments. Daniel glanced at the items on the counter: milk, bread, fruit, and then back at Lily. His silence wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he cared too much and was searching for the right way to show it. For all the storms he had faced as a single father, he knew one truth: no one should have to carry the weight. Emma tugged at her father's sleeve, her young voice carrying more weight than she realized. "Daddy, can we help her?" she asked softly, her big brown eyes filled with innocent concern. Daniel looked at his daughter for a moment and then back at Lily, the trembling cashier. The question from Emma wasn't just a child's instinct, it was a reminder of the values Daniel had tried to instill: compassion, kindness, and remembering that everyone fights battles we cannot see. Without a second thought, Daniel reached for the basket and began adding more essentials. He picked up bread, milk, fruit, cereal, and even a pack of eggs. Each item wasn't just food, it was a message, a gesture saying, "You're not alone." When he placed the items firmly in front of Lily, he spoke with quiet determination. "This is for you." No arguments. His tone wasn't harsh but carried the authority of a man who had known hardship and chosen empathy. The line of impatient customers behind him faded into nothing. At that moment, only Lily mattered. Her hands, still trembling, flew to her mouth as her eyes welled up. "Sir, a broken bar, I can't accept this," she stammered, overwhelmed by the sudden kindness. She had been used to rejection, to cold stares when she made mistakes, to people treating her struggle as inconvenience. To receive generosity instead of judgment left her speechless. But Daniel didn't hesitate. He shook his head gently and said, "You can, and you will. I know what it's like when someone depends on you. Please let me do this for you." His words carried the weight of lived experience. Emma smiled proudly at her dad, sensing the significance of his actions. To her, it wasn't just about giving groceries, it was about showing love to a stranger. Lily's tears began to fall, but this time they weren't from exhaustion or fear, they were from the sudden release of carrying too much alone. She whispered a broken thank you as she scanned the items, her hand steadier now than before. Customers who had once been irritated grew quiet, some even lowering their eyes in shame, realizing they had been blind to the girl's struggle. Daniel helped bag the groceries himself, refusing to let Lily carry the weight alone. When the transaction ended, he offered her a reassuring smile, one that spoke of understanding. "You'll be okay," he said softly, not as a cliché tilde copyright, but as a promise that she wasn't invisible in this world. Emma waved at Lily before skipping beside her dad, happy to know they had made a difference. For them, it was just another morning, but for Lily, it was a moment she would never forget. Days later, fate brought them together again. Daniel and Emma stopped by the same store, this time for snacks after school. As they walked toward the exit, Lily spotted them and hurried over, her face brighter, her hand steady. She clutched a small notebook in her palm, as though she had been waiting for this encounter. "Mr. Daniel," she called, her voice stronger than before. He turned, surprised to see her so different from the fragile cashier he had met. "You gave me more than food," she said, her voice trembling, though now from gratitude, not weakness. "You gave me hope." She explained how that small act of kindness gave her the strength to keep going, to believe that people still cared. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He wasn't a man of many words, but in that moment, words weren't necessary. Emma grinned, holding Lily's hand briefly, the way children naturally connect with hearts rather than appearances. Daniel stood there, silent yet overwhelmed. He had thought it was just groceries, just a bag of food. But to Lily, it had been a lifeline, a reminder that kindness still existed in a world that often felt cruel. He realized sometimes the smallest actions left the largest imprints, not only on those who receive them but also on those who give. He had shown his daughter a lesson more powerful than anything spoken: a compassion isn't charity, it's humanity. And that day in New York, 3 lives quietly changed, bound by an act of love that required no repayment, of survival alone.